Hey everybody, thanks for coming to another episode of My Angular Story. I'm your host, Aaron Frost with Hero Devs, and today we have, as a guest, we have Julien.
Hey, hi, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and we have a guest host, Ryan Connor Frost. Say hi, Ryan.
Hey, yeah.
Yep.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io.
So we're here at Angular Denver. This is one of our podcasts that's more live. It's like in person.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's awesome.
Have you ever? I've never done an in person. Today's like my first day doing in-person podcasts.
I did. I guess I was on the
Angularjs?
Yeah, I did that at NGConf, and Israel translated everything. It was awesome.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. Israel's cool, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, My Angular Story, we just want people to get to know you, get to know who you are a little bit better. I mean, you're obviously a prolific speaker and content editor and author. And so this is just a chance for everyone to kind of get to know you better. So how did you get into Angular? Like, what's your Angular story?
Yeah, so I was on this podcast a couple of years ago, but a lot has happened since then. So, but I first started doing web things when I was probably 12, and I made like the dorkiest websites ever with HTML.
Why dorky? Like what was
literally like Star Wars sound collections.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or because back that was in late 90s, early 2000s, I guess. And so there was no YouTube, there was no Napster yet, there was nothing. So a thing that people would do is download sounds from movies and TV shows and make them like their startup noise or their like shutdown
on their
sound.
Computers. Yeah, I remember that.
There were actual like shareware programs that would like, you could pick a sound clip and do that. So I was like obsessed with that as a like nerdy 10 to 12-year-old. And so I learned how to make this website with HTML, and I would just view, inspect source, and copy and paste and stuff like that, and make these little sites where people could like, I would like amass a collection of sound clips from different movies, and you could just like download them.
Oh wow.
I mean, nobody knew anything about it probably, but it was a really good learning experience. And then I assumed.
And you're a teenager at this point?
Yeah, I was 12 when I started doing that.
I delivered papers. That was like my hobby. That and like fishing.
Yeah.
That was my 12-year-old me. You're building websites.
I was building websites.
I think that's cool.
Very nerdy kid.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
I mean, I was also, to make it even nerdier, I was also in band and things like that.
I was in band too. I'm not knocking band people.
Yeah, I was a percussionist in band.
I played the tuba.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm the one brass dude that always gets put back by the percussion, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was always pals with the tuba players. Yeah. So I was doing that then, and I like always wanted to become a quote real programmer, but there was, like I said, there was no YouTube, there was no Codecademy, none of that existed. So I would go to the library and get books.
Are you kidding
on
me?
C++, but they were like, I might as well have been reading Egyptian hieroglyphics. I had no idea.
It's over your head.
It was way over my head, and so I could never do anything with it. And so I kind of I didn't do much until high school. I kept trying to learn like HTML and CSS and things like that. But
so let's move HTML and CSS to the side, because you clearly were an advanced 12-year-old. Right? So let's put HTML and CSS into its own column.
Right.
When did you actually do other types of code? Because HTML and CSS is code.
So then there was like, I assumed that I couldn't become, because I wasn't able to like teach myself code, like at that time JavaScript wasn't really a thing. No. So I mean, I thought of it as like C++. That was the only thing I knew about code. Yeah. So anyway, I assumed that I had to get a degree in computer science. I showed up to college as a computer science major and saw that my first 8 semesters were going to include, or not 8 semesters, 4 semesters were basically math. And I was like, I don't want to do this. It was like Calc 2, Calc 3, Calc 4. Like, I was like, literally all I want to do is learn how to write code. Yeah. So I switched, and I assumed that meant I would never become a computer programmer. And that was the end of it. And I went into philosophy and history and religion and like got degrees there.
You went to religion?
Yeah, I was at a huge public university, and go Gators.
Oh, this is why Amy said me and you need to go have a drink together one day.
Yeah,
to kind of like.
Yeah, well, we bonded a little bit in London over all that stuff.
Yeah,
but I got a degree in basically religious studies, which is like history and sociology. It's not theology because it was like a big public university.
Gotcha.
And then when I also realized that I didn't want to go into academia because I didn't want to spend my life writing papers, I got a job in finance, and I started doing insurance and investments, and I worked in sales and then in customer service and operations. And I did that for 5 years, all the while just thinking like, I'll never be able to be like a programmer.
Well, I'm not smart enough to be a programmer, so I'll just do these things.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Like I just thought, well, I guess that's that. And I kept doing a little bit of like basic web design over, like looking back, it was like nothing, but it was like just little websites here and there. At one point I started trying to learn Ruby on Rails. And that was my first foray into anything. Anyway, fast forward, I was in finance for like 5 years, and I went into it really wide-eyed and bushy-tailed like a good 20-something-year-old, thinking that like I'm gonna help people. And the farther I got into it, the more I was just sort of like, all I'm really doing here is like making rich people richer. I'm not really helping anybody. And like the further I got into finance, the more I was like studying for exams for regulations. Like I had like Series 6, Series 7, Series 66, like all these investment licenses and insurance licenses and stuff like that. And the higher I was going, I was actually studying for what's called the Series 24, which is the broker exam, like becoming a stockbroker basically. And I was like, this really sucks. Like all I'm doing is memorizing regulations. I'm not doing anything creative. And I also realized that like finance is a really litigious industry. And so
hold on. What does litigious mean?
Oh, it just means like, so at any given time, if you're a financial advisor or anything equivalent, like even somebody accusing you of fraud or theft or mishandling funds can like completely destroy you, at least for many years.
Okay.
Like even because like they could sue you basically. Yeah. Litigious just means like people like to sue and things like that. And I just was realizing how fragile that was, like, because I was working in operations and hiring financial advisors. Well, I wasn't doing the hiring, but I was seeing like you get these like black marks on your record as a financial advisor if somebody even like just said like they did it has to be recorded as like this client accused this person of doing this. Eventually it was cleared, but it's still there. And I was like, man, this is just not a good place to go. And so
you realized that, and then
the stock brokerage I was working at, their claim to fame was that they wrote their own trading platform in C#, and they had a whole tech division with software developers. And so I had become friends with them over working there, and I was like, is it possible for me to like become a developer? Like, do I need a degree? And the lead there, who became one of my really good friends, was like, I dropped out of college. Like, I don't have a degree. My degree, I was going to get a degree in linguistics, and I dropped out of college. Like, and I've been a developer for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, oh, okay. And so the developers at my stock brokerage gave me like Pluralsight access.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And we're like, here, learn. Like,
so this is like what, 6 years ago?
Yeah,
5 years ago?
Yeah, like 2013, probably.
Okay,
like six years ago. They were like, just start learning .NET MVC and jQuery.
Yeah, I mean, 6 years ago, AngularJS was new.
Right.
So jQuery was the big thing at that point, right? And so was .NET MVC,
Yeah, so I just went on Pluralsight and started watching Scott Allen teach on .NET MVC.
His famous Pluralsight .NET MVC course.
Yeah. And then they started giving me like some side projects at the brokerage, and I could start dividing up my time between what I was doing and some like, I mean, easy dev tasks.
They're softballing you some stuff.
Yeah, they were softballing, but it was like really cool, helpful because they would. I mean, my friend Josh, who was that senior dev without a degree, he would like review my code for me and like teach me and stuff, and it like was a huge deal. Like the fact that he would take the time to like go through and like give me a task to do, and I think that was really key, just like giving me something to do and then following up with me and reviewing it and things like that. So what I wanted to do was move into become a developer at that brokerage.
Yeah.
But it was a small company, and one thing led to another, and it just didn't work out. Like they didn't want me to move. Like I was responsible for a whole section of the business, and me moving to the developer role would mean like they had to hire somebody else to come do that part of what I was doing. And so they said no. And that was the day I decided I was going to move to Portland because I was like, well, this is going nowhere. I had lived in Central Florida for a decade at that point. And so I was like, okay, are
you from Central Florida?
No, no. I was born in Georgia. I was born in Valdosta, Georgia, on an Air Force base. My dad was a fighter pilot. Okay. And we moved around in the South a lot, like Florida, Georgia, Texas, Virginia. And we ended up in Florida. So I went to high school there and then went to college there.
So you've been there for a decade and you're like, I'm out.
Yeah, I wanted to get as far away as possible, basically. Like I had gone through a divorce and like a bunch of problems in not problems, but issues in my family. And I was just like, all right, well, this is a dead-end career. Mid-20s? Yeah, exactly. I sort of was like, well, I think I was like 25 at the time. And so I was like,
that's a hard time of life sometimes.
Yeah.
You're just figuring some stuff out, and it's a lot of transition, right?
Yeah, I feel like 18 to 25 is like this downward slope where you're going off of momentum based on how you grew up and like what you thought was going to happen with your life and what your parents' expectations were. And then like you sort of grind to a halt in your mid to late 20s and like reevaluate everything. And you're like, maybe I don't want to do any of this. Yeah. And so that's sort of what I went through. And so I started looking for jobs in New York and Portland because I had a bunch of friends in New York and I thought that would be fun. But Portland was really where I wanted to go. And I had to ask somebody for advice on like, how do I get my first job? And one random person was like, there's this thing called Angularjs that's really cool. And you should just like learn that and put it on your resume and like you'll get hired immediately.
So a rando.
There was
not like your best friend. Not like the best friend.
I don't even talk to this guy anymore. I talked to him on the phone once because he was a developer in New York. And
a gentleman says to you, hey, maybe try AngularJS.
Yeah, he's like, learn this Angularjs thing. And some people at the brokerage had used it, but I had never looked at it. And he's like, yeah, use this AngularJS, like learn this AngularJS thing. So I mean, looking back, I really didn't learn much of it. But that's where I got the idea and was like, all right. And so I started trying to get applied for a bunch of jobs at that, and that ended up being jobs that were .NET, MVC, and some AngularJS. And so I ended up getting offered a contract job in the suburbs of Portland at a finance company, and it was doing .NET and jQuery. And
that's right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I just fixed bugs but eventually what was cool about that was like eventually they needed to write some new stuff, and so I suggested we use AngularJS, which is like 1.2 at the time.
Yeah.
And
so this is like 2014?
14, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 2014. So I had been learning it myself. I remember watching like Alyssa Nichols' course on Code School.
Yeah.
Which is just so trippy now that like we're like pals.
Yeah.
And I managed to convince my boss to use AngularJS. And what's really funny about that is that he was like, bro, I hear these rumors that there's going to be this Angular 2 thing coming and it's going to be a lot of work. And I was like, no, it's fine. It's not going to be, they're going to make it really easy to upgrade. It's going to be totally fine.
Don't worry about it.
So this guy,
I'm not going to have to write a website just to teach people how to do that.
This guy probably hates me now. He probably just throws darts at my picture now. But I managed to convince him. And so
I think there's probably a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
They got Sam Julien pics on the wall.
I think so too.
Dartboard.
No, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And so, so 2014 was when I went from just walking through tutorials on AngularJS to actually like writing AngularJS in production. And that got me my next job, which was at a nonprofit in Portland, where I like really did a lot of like legit AngularJS work, and I was there for like several years, and that's where I got into all the migration stuff and everything. So, but yeah, it's crazy because it was kind of like a series of random events of just like making the best of whatever situation I was in.
Yeah.
And then it ended up sort of just becoming my career. And
I see a lot of similarities between what you're saying and like what I kind of experienced. So that's funny.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. For those who don't know that's listening, a lot of people consider Sam to be one of the experts on upgrading an AngularJS app to an Angular app. And he just gave a talk on it this morning. I went to it. And he's got a website, upgradingangularjs.com. And he put a lot of passion into something that a lot of us have done and felt a lot of pain over. Well, he felt pain and like channeled it into a course people can take to learn how to kind of maybe hopefully overcome some of the pains you learned just kind of organically on your own, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like, the nonprofit I was at was like really small. It was just me and a couple people. And I sort of became the lead for the front end, even though I probably shouldn't have I didn't have the experience at the time, but I just sort of like had to do it, And so my boss was just sort of like, figure it out. I don't know. Yeah. And so I was like, all right. And
you've been building websites since you were 12.
Yeah, exactly. You're up. And so I just felt this huge disconnect because I was watching these like conference talks on YouTube where they're like talking about Angular 2 and how like easy breezy it was going to be. And then I was looking at our code base and I was like, but we're using like gulp and like I don't even know what a module is. What's a webpack? Yeah. Like I don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the docs at the time, like now that I like know the docs people, I feel guilty about saying this, but like the docs at the time were pretty much like step 1, use modules. Step 2, use TypeScript. Step 3, boom, you're done. Upgrade. Yeah. Like it was like there were no details of like actually how to move. Because I think the thing that people didn't realize that everyone was experiencing that was like AngularJS was a lot closer to jQuery than it was to like React. Like it was in the world of you could put AngularJS with a script tag on anything and like use AngularJS for something. You didn't need a build process necessarily. You didn't need modules. So the shift to Angular 2+ with modules and compiling and transpiling and all of that was like a huge paradigm shift for people.
Yeah.
That if they had just spent their time learning AngularJS and they weren't like keeping up with things like React and Webpack and all that, like it was like learning French for 5 years and then being told like, actually like it's time for everybody to speak Chinese. And you're like, what? Yeah. Like, so that was the frustration I felt. And so then I tried to just channel that into like I was actually I was at NGConf one year, really frustrated, and venting to Rob Wormold, who like we had been buddies for a while through this chat this like unofficial Angular Slack. And so we were pals throughout, like when he got hired at Google and stuff. And so I was just like dumping on him basically at NGConf. And he was like, I hear you. Like, we totally agree. You could like, whatever comes out of this, you could just like contribute back to the community in some form or fashion, Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could. And so that's kind of what inspired me to do the course and all that stuff. And
that's cool.
And give talks and all that stuff. So it's funny because Upgrade is like a really niche subject right now. It's not like most people don't care about it anymore, but for the people that do care about it, it's like really, really important,
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Because everyone who was writing AngularJS, which was everyone, you go back to 2014, everyone wrote AngularJS.
Yeah.
Like no one was like, jQuery, like React didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
It was like, no, you use AngularJS with either gulp or grunt. Like that's it, right?
Yeah.
That was what you did. And so many people have these apps, and it's time to get off of the AngularJS, right? Like it's 2019. So there's a surprising amount of people out there still writing AngularJS.
Yeah.
And I look at like the cost of upgrading to whatever, Vue, React. And so I look at that cost, React, Vue, going Angular 2, like Angular X, going to whatever. It's big. And so I don't see how it's not a much more important topic, given the amount of still production, like ready AngularJS code that the internet is like burning every single, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely floored at you called it a niche. I'm surprised it's not more mainstream, to be honest, because it affects way more people than there are that care about it. But to my point, like I've written some blogs over the years. I'm not a prolific blogger. My most popular blogs, like still this month, my blog with the most reads will be this Webpack hack I wrote around an AngularJS thing.
Yeah.
So I still there's still a lot of AngularJS out there is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why I will die confused at why more people aren't saying, how could I make the rewrite easier? And they're just like, no, we're just going to keep writing AngularJS. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially since the end of life of the software is next June. It's like this coming up June 2021.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me, bro. Like, yeah, it's interesting to me. But yeah, I love your course. I love that you're in the community. A few months ago when I made this big mistake, you were like one of the first people to reach out to me and be like, hey, that wasn't nice. And you could have been mean about it, but you were like really nice about it.
I tried to do it in a loving way.
You're like, hey, that wasn't very nice. And I was like, yeah. At first I read, I was like, what wasn't nice? Because I didn't understand what had happened.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, that wasn't nice, But I've appreciated that you're a member of the Angular community. And for those that don't know, Sam's girlfriend, Amy, she works with me at HeroDev. She's our business manager, and she's pretty awesome.
She's extremely awesome.
She's pretty cool. Yeah.
She's a keeper.
Yeah, she's awesome. And you guys bought a farm up in rural, I want to say Oregon, but it's Seattle. You're all in
Washington.
Washington.
It's Washington. It's an hour north of Portland. It's not far. It's not far from Portland because I lived in Portland for 4 years. Amy grew up in Southern Oregon.
Okay.
But yeah, it's actually me and a handful of friends, and we went in on this land together, and we're
like 10 acres.
It's 10 acres.
Okay.
And it has greenhouses, and we're going to start doing some organic farming. It actually has like the organic farm certification. Like the previous owners did that, and they built up these greenhouses, and there's fruit trees and all that stuff. And so we're slowly
fruits in season. Are you guys picking the fruit?
Yeah, we got peaches and blueberries. The apples aren't quite ready yet, but yeah, it's starting to come together. We got some barn cats that we're working on getting acclimated, and we've got chickens we got 20 baby chicks that we're like insulating over at a neighbor's house. Yeah, the idea is like, so we have the main structure, and then people are converting other structures to tiny houses and living there. And then the idea is like, we'll have some sort of like guest tiny house, and people can come and just like unplug from everything and hang out in the forest and go to lakes and things like that.
How close are lakes to you?
Like 5 minutes.
5 minutes to
like, yeah, like
fishing.
We're like in between two lakes, and one of the lakes, which I think is a little bit farther, is some of the best, some sort of fishing in North America. But I can't remember what kind of fish it was. But yeah, there's a lot of fishing in that area, a lot of outdoorsy stuff. And then the long-term goal is that we try to because we're trying to do a lot of permaculture, which is like sustainable. It's sort of like doing organic farming in a way that's self-sustaining, so that you're not like basically doing chores from sunup to sundown, but you coordinate like the plants and animals so that they're, self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And you build these systems out. So we're working on that. The idea is after we get all that set up, then we can start bringing people out and teaching them, and they can stay at the property for a few days and like build stuff with us and teach. But we are pretty convinced that like there's a lot of people, especially in tech, there seems to be a lot of people who want to like go be away from tech and do nature stuff and learn agricultural things and farming and that kind of thing. And so that's the vision, is to do that kind of thing. So and we've got 3 of us now that work remote from the property, which is pretty cool. Like, we don't have the best internet, but we also don't have the worst internet. Yeah. So it's been working out. So that's cool, man. That's been good. Yeah.
I want to come up once your hydroponic garden's going.
Yeah.
I just want to watch you. Wait, hydroponic, or are you doing aeroponic?
I think we're going to do aeroponic.
Or wait, aquaponic. What's the difference?
Well, so aquaponic is with water. And so the previous owners did have this giant aquaponic system.
Okay.
But we don't really want to do aquaponic because it takes a lot. Like, you got to keep that water a certain temperature, and like it uses obviously tons and tons of water all the time. It's just a lot of work. They were like farming tilapia and stuff like that. We don't really want to do that. So I think we're going to do aeroponic, like lettuce and vegetables and stuff like that, which is, it's like suspended. You shoot water under the roots rather than keeping the roots constantly in water. Right.
Yeah.
So, but we're sort of a ways from that, because right now we're focused on all the infrastructure of like all the tiny houses and making sure there's like comfortable bathrooms and stuff like that throughout. So so it was pretty funny. I stumbled into the Angular community 5 or 6 years ago and just sort of like kept it going, and eventually started working for Auth0, and now here I am working remote from a farm in Washington. So I've come a long way from finance in Central Florida.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
No regrets?
No, it's been awesome. It's been a really good journey. And now like what really gets me going is like teaching other people. Like, so one of the most pivotal experiences for me was at my previous job. I mentored a coworker who was a business reporting guy, and he wanted to become a developer. And so I like mentored him, and it ended up like he ended up becoming a junior developer, which of course included like a big salary bump and things like that. And so it was like, I mean, he did all the work obviously, but like I helped him make this like huge life altering change. And that was like super rewarding. He's actually here at Angular Denver this year, which is awesome. So that like caused a big shift in me, because I was like, whoa, this is what I want to do, is like help other people, because like that translates into real stuff, like being able to pay back student loans faster and being able to increase your quality of life and get a remote job, and like being able to go from non-developer to developer if you want to is a huge like change, like a huge quality of life improvement. And so that's what got me really into like teaching and writing and speaking and things like that. Like that's sort of what started that whole thing. So so that's sort of been my focus, and that's like why I started.
So-called Mountain Dew.
Oh,
we have a Joe Eames. We're recording a podcast.
Everybody, Joe Eames just walked in. Just walked into the podcast. Didn't even see it coming.
Didn't even see it coming. Did you say Cyprus? Did somebody say Cyprus?
No, you weren't summoned. We didn't summon a genie.
We didn't summon you at all.
Yeah, you just showed up.
I must have misheard you saying Tesla.
I did mention Pluralsight at one point in this, and maybe that summoned you.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yes, I don't know.
And we got your drink, bro. Joe Eames has showed up to hear the last 3 minutes.
Waltzed in like he owned the place. Yeah. And
Do you own this place?
I'm a part owner.
He's a part owner. That's cool. That's great, man.
Silent partner.
Yeah, of course. That's cool. Yeah. We just got done learning about Sam Julien. You have any questions you want to ask Sam?
Is that what we're doing? We're asking Sam questions?
Well, I mean, don't ask something I already asked.
Okay.
But if you were here for the last 30 minutes,
feel free to ask anything that I haven't already asked.
What sort of beard care products do you use?
Yeah.
Not many. That working remote thing really put a dent in but I do.
You don't trim, you don't keep it as primed as it used to?
No, not. I need to start doing that, but now it's even harder because I live an hour away from anything.
From like a barber?
I like to use like a comb and like a brush, and then I have this like, I tried different kinds of oil, but I don't really like
it. Dude, it gets on your phone when you take a phone call.
Yeah, I don't like the oiliness, and I don't like that because you're obviously using it like on your mustache, so then you smell it for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And that bothers me. Even the neutral ones just smell like oil to me. And so I have been using like this beard balm stuff, but I can't remember the brand for the life of me. But you basically use a brush to brush it in, like a boar's hair brush to brush it in. So I like doing that.
I don't do any of that stuff.
But I only do that for special occasions.
Yeah.
I should probably be more. Yeah, I should probably be more diligent about it, and get to my Cardington levels of beard care. Or the real pinnacle for me is my friend Kyle Shevlin in the React community. His beard is like what I aspire to be. But I don't know. What are you gonna do?
Mike, next question: is Gatsby plus Airtable literally going to take over the world? Is it?
It really might.
Actually,
honestly,
new overlord.
Is Gatsby server-side rendering React?
Yes. So even though we're on an Angular podcast, my latest obsession is Gatsby, which is it's a static site generator, and it's like server-side React, and I just love it because it feeds both my developer nerd side and my writing side because it integrates with Markdown really well, and you basically can just pull data from different sources, transform it into GraphQL, and then use React. So render it all. And it's super fast, and they built all the tooling in. And and Airtable then is sort of like spreadsheets as a service where you can you can build up data through it, and you can even automate it. I don't know if you've heard of, there's a company called Zapier. Or Zapier.
Yeah.
And so you can automate. I made this thing, I don't really use it right now, but I made this script where I can add a calendar entry into a speaking events calendar on Google Calendar, and it will automatically add that to an Airtable, which then Gatsby can just pull in to my to the new version of my site that I'm working on.
And then Circle CI deploys it for you.
Yeah, basically. So then I just make a calendar entry, and it's my talk section of my website.
Site just deployed.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So anybody who's making a blog or a portfolio or a sales site,
Then why doesn't Angular have its Gatsby?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's because they've talked a little bit about.
What about Gatsbing?
Gatsbing.
Gatsbing.
Bing. Yeah.
Bing?
Yeah, NG.
Gatsbing.
Gats.
I was
B with a Y. NG.
My idea was that the Angular version would be called Zelda, because that's F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife.
Zelda.
Yeah. But also Zelda is just awesome because it's a video game. But I think that project called Angular Photon that they were working on is the closest thing. But I think the problem with Angular is all of the dependency injection and modules and all that stuff. So
Ivy fixes it.
I think once Ivy comes along and
you're serious? I was joking. Sorry.
No, I actually do think that because some of the stuff Rob talked about this morning, where they're trying to make modules optional, and all of that happens with Ivy basically, or is enabled by Ivy. So I've been saying for a while, first person who makes a static site generator with Angular is going to win a lot of things. Because
Gatsby
is just
Gatsby.
Gatsby.
Yeah.
Gatsby.
Did you register the DNS already?
Everybody goes.
I will by the
time this podcast
I'll do it by the time the podcast
airs. I love Gatsby.
Because I know the listeners will do it.
Yeah.
But if the listener does do it, Sam already said you're going to be the winner of a lot of things.
You are. It's true.
All right. Well, we're at our time, so we're going to do some picks real quick, and then we'll sign off. I'll go first on the picks. Joe, you got to come up with a pick real quick because you walked in.
Sure.
So I've done 4 episodes today. So I'm deep in to the bench on picks. So I'm going to go with I don't think I've picked this yet. I'm going to pick the Model 3, the Tesla Model 3.
Nice.
And I'm convinced there's not a nicer car for that money. And it's fantastically safe. The amount of warnings it constantly gives me about stuff going on the road, I love. The autopilot thing on the freeway. I was gonna read my email anyway on the freeway, but now I can, But now I can do it. Yeah, now I can do it with safer.
Yeah,
safer email reading.
Yeah. No, it's fast. It's secure. It's not ever gonna tip. There's no moving parts, which is what got me pissed off with my last car. It kept breaking because there's so many moving parts and they're all really high. Anyway, I'm gonna pick the Model 3. If you're thinking about it, don't test drive it if you're on the edge, because then you'll just be like, yeah, I'm getting it. But you should go on the logic that it is a nice car. So anyway, that's my pick, the Model 3. Mine is named Mercury, by the way.
You named your
car? Freddie Mercury?
After Sir Freddie, yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Bohemian Rhapsody movie?
Loved it.
It's gotten a lot of mixed reviews, so
I loved it.
Curious.
Yeah, I loved it. Why would have mixed reviews? What was mixed about it?
Well, we shouldn't get into it on this podcast, but yeah.
I heard the complaints about the accuracy of it, but besides that, I didn't hear any other complaints.
Yeah, I would say mostly the accuracy.
Right.
I heard it wasn't accurate, but still a good story.
But Rami Malek, though, you can't beat.
I heard some of the same complaints about Avengers Endgame that wasn't accurate, but I still think it was a good movie.
Yeah.
Regardless of its accuracy. Yeah. Oh, that's right. There is source material to go off of. I forget.
Yeah. You were trying to make it.
Yeah. Something completely ridiculous.
The Bible. I heard the Bible. I heard
that. That's a conversation for another day with the three of us.
All right.
Pick,
Joe. Pick.
Since you just walked up, is Diet Mountain Dew your pick?
It could be my pick. No. I have a different pick. I'm a big gamer. Everybody who listens to the podcast I'm on knows that. So I should pick a game, right? So
Fortnite.
Fortnite. Wow. Just dropped the little frost bomb the bomb.
Yeah, you did.
Do I have to be embarrassed to say I've never played Fortnite?
I've never played Fortnite either. I feel like it's
that's my pick for it.
That's your pick.
All right. For everyone, Ryan Connor picked Fortnite. That's his pick.
All right. So I'll go with a little board game. It's a kind of almost really a dice game called Dop Felt So Clever. It's German for twice as clever. You can get it here in the U.S., no problem. DOPPFELT, so clever.
Dop Felt So Clever.
Dop Felt So Clever. It plays, I think, just for 4 people. And it's like this. It's like Yahtzee on super steroids, right?
Oh, wow.
It has this. It's like if Yahtzee and Superman had a baby.
Oh wow!
Right? Or Yahtzee. Who's the coolest Avenger?
The Hulk.
Yahtzee and the Avengers. All of them.
Yahtzee and the Avengers
had a baby. Yes. It is so fun. It is so cool. It's got you roll dice, and while you're taking your turn, other people get to play as well because they get to use the dice that you don't use, and you have to choose which dice you're going to use. There's a lot of strategy yet left because it's a dice rolling game, which I really like dice rolling games. Plays in 30-ish minutes, maybe 45 if you got 4 people total, but plays relatively quickly. It's actually kind of complex to like explain because the scoring is actually really, really deep to it, but at its core, it's actually a relatively straightforward game. It's the kind of the Yahtzee action. You roll dice, you keep some of them, and you re-roll the rest that you have, and you do that 3 times, and then you score. So that's the essence of the game, but really fun, great kind of a game because it's a mix of luck and strategy, and you just have no idea who's going to win because the scoring is really, really complicated. You have to like spend a couple minutes afterwards like tallying up your score to figure out and compare to other people to figure out who won. Really had a fun time playing it. So played it several times. We kept wanting to play it over and over again. So that'll be my pick. Dop felt so clever.
Dop felt so clever, but you know what? Dop isn't.
Dop felt so clever.
Dop felt so clever.
He felt clever, but
Yeah.
he was wrong.
He isn't.
He was wrong.
Or she. I don't know.
Yeah,
They're not. Dop felt so clever. They're not.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's convenient that Joe asked me about Airtable because I learned that trick with Zapier and Airtable through a podcast called the Automators Podcast, which is a whole podcast about automating your Mac, which is like the nerdiest thing ever, but it's so awesome.
I would hear that name and I would think there's one episode, www.zapier.com.
No.
Thanks for listening.
No, there's so much.
This podcast is sponsored by Zapier.
Yeah, there's so much. And it's hosted by 2 longtime Mac people named Rosemary Orchard and David Sparks, and who are also on other Mac podcasts. The intersection of developers and like hardcore Mac users is actually surprisingly small, I've realized. So I've been telling everybody about all these like Mac tricks that I've learned with automation and different apps and stuff like that. And I'm surprised.
Lay down an example for us.
An example, best thing ever is called Keyboard Maestro. It's a app that you can use to automate literally anything on your Mac. Like I have a shortcut where I can hit caps lock S and it puts my Mac into screencasting mode. So it opens up Camtasia with the right like proportions. It opens VS Code in a special teach settings in like the right resolution. It opens up a terminal. It like does all of this with a single keystroke. And it's this like $27 shareware application that I learned about on these Mac podcasts. And so when you combine that with development, it's like super amazing. Another one is called Text Expander, where it's basically text snippets, but you can also use like JavaScript in your text snippets. So that's another really awesome one. But I learned all that through Automators and another Mac podcast called Mac Power Users. They're on the same, there's like this tech network called Relay.fm. So those are my picks.
I'm trying to find the Automators podcast.
Go to automators.fm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was spelling automator wrong, just so you know. I was spelling it Mater.
M-A-T-E-R.
Tomatoes.
Mater.
Favorite.
It's Mator. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for doing the show with us. Sam, I'm sure some people might have questions for you, whether it's upgrade or whatevs. How do they get in touch with you?
Probably the best thing is to go to upgradingangularjs.com because I have all of my contact stuff there. And then also on Twitter, I'm just at Sam Julien, Julien. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Everybody, go give Sam a follow. Reach out with him if you have any questions. And if not, thanks for coming. Sam, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Go download Fortnite.
Go download
Fortnite.
Says the guest host. All right. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACH